Let us unite in a spirit of prayerful reflection as I offer these words, followed by silence and our sung affirmation. Spirit of life, we have come here today to remember what some are intent on making us forget. To remember a man who fought to end segregation. To remember a man who marched to counter prejudice and oppression. To remember a man who was filled with peace and hope. To remember a man with promise and a dream. To remember a man with a voice that rang out for justice and freedom. All these things we remember and honor in the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., and a life well lived in service to all. Amen. You can remain seated and join in reading number 584, A Network of Mutuality. It's in your gray hymnal. Oh, I'm sorry. It's up there, maybe. Sorry about that. Number 584. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. There are some things in our social system to which all of us ought to be maladjusted. We must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. Before it is too late, we must narrow the gaping chasm between our proclamations of peace and our lowly deeds which precipitate and perpetuate war. One day, we must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means. Although January 15th is the actual date of his birth, tomorrow, January 19th, communities across the country will celebrate one of America's preeminent advocates of nonviolence and one of the greatest nonviolent leaders in world history, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. During his leadership of the modern American civil rights movement, African Americans achieved more genuine progress toward racial equality in this country than the previous 350 years had produced. Moreover, all of this was accomplished during less than 13 years of leadership. While others were advocating for freedom by any means necessary, including violence, Dr. King drew inspiration from both his Christian faith and the peaceful teachings of Gandhi, and used the power of words and acts of nonviolent resistance, such as protests, grassroots organizing, and civil disobedience to achieve what seemed like impossible goals. Okay, so we know where the origin of adult MLK Jr.'s approach to social justice came from. But I wondered how much of that zeal, that compassion for the marginalized and downtrodden, began right at home as a little black boy living in segregated Atlanta, Georgia. There are those of us who believe that our lives are predestined and that we should resign ourselves to our lot in life. Yet the truth is, it's up to each of us to decide what that destiny will be. And while we're each born with a life purpose, it's up to us to answer yes in fulfilling it. It's just like when we choose what to eat, who to befriend and keep company with, whether to turn right or left when we leave our home each day. Choosing to say yes to our destiny is a decision that can only be realized when we take action to make that choice a reality. And that is what Martin Luther King Jr. did. As a child in Atlanta, Dr. King experienced firsthand the sting of segregation. But his parents taught him Christian love and dignity, thereby shaping his resolve. He came from a strong ministerial background, with his father and grandfather as Baptist preachers, instilling early lessons in faith and justice. In his own words, he said, and I quote, "Of course I was religious. I grew up in the church. I'm the son of a preacher. My grandfather was a preacher. My great-grandfather was a preacher. My only brother was a preacher. My daddy's brother is a preacher. So I didn't have much choice, I guess." Moreover, he continues saying, "In my own life and in the life of a person who is seeking to be strong, you combine in your character antitheses strongly marked. You're both militant and moderate. You're both idealistic and realistic. And I think that my strong determination for justice comes from the very strong, dynamic personality of my father. And I would hope that the gentle aspect comes from my mother, who is a very gentle and sweet person." So, like many black children growing up in the segregated South, his mother confronted the age-old problem of how to explain discrimination and segregation to a small child. She told him about slavery and how it ended with the Civil War. She tried to explain the divided system of the South with segregated schools, restaurants, theaters, housing, the white and colored signs on drinking fountains, waiting rooms, lavatories, all as a social condition rather than a natural order. But the most important thing that she made clear was telling him, "You are as good as anyone." Martin continued saying, "I always had a resentment towards the system of segregation and felt that it was a grave injustice. I remember a trip to a downtown shoe store with my father when I was still small. We had sat down in the first empty seats at the front of the store. A young white clerk came up and murmured politely, 'I'll be happy to wait on you if you'll just move to those seats in the rear.' My dad immediately retorted, 'There's nothing wrong with these seats. We're quite comfortable here.' 'Sorry,' said the clerk, 'but you'll have to move.' My father retorted, 'We'll either buy shoes sitting here or we won't buy shoes at all.' Whereupon he took me by the hand and walked out of the store. This was the first time I had seen my dad so furious. That experience revealed to me at a very early age that my father had not adjusted to the system, and he played a great part in shaping my conscience. I still remember walking down the street beside him as he muttered, 'I don't care how long I have to live with this system, I will never accept it.' While he believed that becoming a preacher was his destiny, there were other life events that became intertwined with his ministry. So when Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her bus seat, Dr. King, then a new pastor at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, offered his church for meetings. Due to his youth, his respected standing, and lack of local enemies, he was chosen to lead the Montgomery Improvement Association, also known as the MIA. His powerful oratory and commitment to nonviolent protests guided the successful year-long boycott, ending bus segregation and launching him onto the national stage as a key civil rights leader. He went on to lead similar campaigns against poverty and international conflict, always maintaining fidelity to his principles that men and women everywhere, regardless of color or creed, are equal members of the human family. Now, manifesting your destiny begins with knowing what you want and believing that you can attain your goals. When you take responsibility for fulfilling your destiny and begin acting with the intention of doing so, you not only take fate into your own hands, you also become the hands of your fate. Every choice made can be a creative act toward realizing a dream. Whether you believe it is your destiny to be a parent, an adventurer, an artist, a pioneer, a spiritual guru, or a community leader. Sometimes years pass and you may begin to believe that your dreams and goals may never become manifest. But someone famous once told me that a delay is not a denial. And the current of life has a way of sweeping us to shores away from our intended direction. At the age of 35, Martin Luther King Jr. was the youngest man to have received the Nobel Peace Prize. When notified of his selection, he announced that he would turn over his prize money of $54,123 to the furtherance of the civil rights movement. Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, Nobel Peace Prize lecture, and letters from a Birmingham jail are among the most revered orations and writings in the English language. His accomplishments are now taught to American children of all races, and his teachings are studied by scholars and students worldwide. He is the only non-president to have a national holiday dedicated in his honor and is the only non-president memorialized on the Great Mall in the nation's capital. He is memorialized in hundreds of statues, parks, streets, squares, churches, and other public facilities around the world as a leader. Now, the decision to fulfill your destiny is always a choice and can be empowering. It's important that we learn to follow our instinct and intuition so that we recognize opportunities when they are presented to us and also recognize the decision that may not serve a greater picture, making it easier to push them aside. However, knowing you are fulfilling your destiny because you want to, rather than because you have to, can make a huge difference. Because when you're freed from obligation, the journey becomes an adventure, rather than the obligatory steps you are being forced to take. Now, these words spoken by the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, are some of the most famous words that he spoke in 1963 at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. They seem to be the most remembered words because they are the ones that are most often quoted. However, there are other words that he said as part of another speech delivered at Stanford, highlighting the intersection of poverty and racial injustice. And I quote, "We must see that the struggle today is much more difficult. It's difficult because we are struggling for genuine equality. And it's much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee a livable income and a good, solid job. It's much easier to guarantee the right to vote than it is to live in sanitary, decent housing conditions. It's much easier to integrate a public park than it is to make genuine, quality, integrated education a reality. And so today we are struggling for something which says we demand genuine equality," end of quote. Now, in his lifetime, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. tackled many issues, but with so many of the same issues that he talked about occurring in Black and brown people in a speech made in 1967, and so much dismantling of laws and disintegrating civil rights, how relevant is his legacy today? I believe his legacy is still relevant because he was an example of how to stay the course, no matter how long it takes for change to happen. In the words of Cole Arthur Riley, our resistance is not predicated on how likely it will be to alter the conscience of the oppressor. We resist to retain our own conscience and to awaken all others who are still in possession of their own souls. Dr. King's work provides a framework for ongoing struggles for civil rights, voting rights, and human dignity worldwide, reminding us that the fight for a beloved community is unfinished. In the words of Dr. King's daughter Bernice, and I quote, "Creating the beloved community requires rejecting fear-based myths, defending civil rights, educating ourselves and others about the history of American systems and what really happened, and organizing across differences to eradicate injustice and expand dignity for everyone. Creating beloved community also requires understanding that honorable equity does not equal oppression for a group accustomed to prospering at the expense of other groups. Your destiny may be waiting for you. Your fate is in your hands, and it's never too late to answer the call. From my heart to yours, may it be so.